you have to have an ability to understand people's relationship with money. I think that's the fundamentals in this industry when you work with all aspects of it, actually. But to understand this very emotional, also very historical relationship with money, and to actually dwell upon and think about what it means for a customer. We can see, for example, when you listen, co-listening with the guys in the operations team, that it's not always comfortable to talk about money. If you have money, that is emotionally one way. If you talk about savings, and you can be, and if you loan money, it's probably even more emotional. You're getting evaluated, and you're being judged.
Yeah.
It's getting very, very personal.
Yeah.
And the more I work with this, I understand that you have to pay attention to that. You have to understand the emotional relationship between money and humans in order to create the communication, as well as a customer journey and a customer experience that takes this into consideration. Even if we have all these regulatory demands and we have compliance and legal aspects of it, you have to figure out the way of not presenting yourself as more complex and inaccessible than you have to.
Jenny, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you very much for being here.
All right, so let's just start. Tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Jenny Gaffner. I am Nordic head of marketing and communication at BNP Paribas Personal Finance. I've been with the bank for 8 years, and I have a background in fintech, digital banking, and e-commerce.
Great. Okay. So tell us a little bit about marketing and communications in financial services. How is it different from working in marketing and communications in any other industry?
I would say that since we're a very regulated industry, you have to pay close attention to compliance and regulatory demands, and having that in your perspective when you plan your communication and marketing activities and product development, as well as the full digital journey, to make it smooth and seamless for the customer, but still applying all the demands that is applied to you. I think that is a big difference in the financial services compared to working with the marketing in a retail industry or fast-moving consumer goods. Of course, there are some regulations, but not to the extent as it is applied on the financial services industry.
Right, and is there anything else aside from regulation that perhaps you think makes it either more challenging or that presents some nuanced approaches to communicating value?
Well, besides from the regulatory demands that we have, it's also, of course, to some extent, complexities of the services we're providing. I would say that many financial services, they're not that complex in itself, but we as an industry is probably most of the time viewed from a customer perspective as fairly complex to deal with. Always a little bit maybe anxiety involved in different types of banking decisions, and that is of course also something you have to take into consideration when you plan your marketing and communications, to be perceived as the easiness and the seamlessness and transparency. Also the tone of voice you're using to create a relationship that is built upon trust, as well as that customer is understanding what he or she is about to commit to. So all these things together makes it probably a little bit more tricky than other industries, I would say. The regulatory demands, as well as the perceived complexity of the products we're offering.
Right, and oftentimes when we speak to fintechs and to marketing executives in fintechs, they have a very, their role when it comes to marketing and communication has a very strong component on raising capital, which I guess is not necessarily the case in an incumbent. What would you say are the main differences, or what would you perceive to be the main differences between a marketing and communications role in incumbents and in fintechs?
Well, we have the luxury of having a very strong foundation and also a legacy and heritage that we can build upon, and we can have a strong focus on marketing that is driving the business and generating sales to the end customer. On the other hand, I think that maybe fintech has the positive aspect of being new and fresh and super innovative, is that is something that you can bring to the table. Mm-hmm. That is not something I'm bringing to the table most of the time when I'm communicating to my customers. At least not from the bank I'm coming from, that we have that. Even if we're a digital bank or we have a very strong focus on technology and tech development, that is nothing we're really communicating to the customers. We're more maybe focusing on other types of values. And when you're a fintech, if you communicate to either people who are going to fund your business or to the end customer, I think you have to a larger extent can focus on your strong tech capabilities, or I hope so, at least that they do, because that is something that is very cutting edge comparing to traditional banks. That is maybe a little bit more tricky to be that swift and agile in their tech development.
Right. Okay, and tell us a little bit about what are the main challenges that you encounter in your role?
There are many challenges, I would say. We can say, getting back a little bit to the question we just discussed, I find it's great to have a strong foundation to build upon and stand on and to work from. But I believe that many fintech organizations, fintech companies are working more swift and agile than traditional banks. And that is, of course, a very strong competitive advantage for them. And that we don't have in a traditional bank due to the size, of course, but also that we are working with systems that are large, sometimes old, and it's getting way more complex. So I think that one of the challenges that working in a traditional bank is that to find a smart way of working with different fintech companies and finding partnerships that is adding value to you, and you can add value to the fintech, and finding that your world is becoming way more interesting in working with many more partners than you used to do. That is one challenge. Another challenge is to find the right people, I would say. Once upon a time, you were just a marketeer, but right now, if you work in a bank, you have to understand data, you have to understand technology, you have to, of course, understand communication, you have to understand sales and how to create a great customer experience from a UX and UI perspective. So you have to, even if not all that is your precise expertise, you have to be able to understand it, discuss it, and have a more 360 view on everything, I would say. And to find those people is a bit trickier.
Right, so it's a much more specialized role then.
Yes, specialized in some ways, because you're specialized in your area when it comes to providing data or technology or customer flows and so forth. Yes, that is more maybe precise, but I think that the marketer's role has changed, we say the last 10 years. That back in the days, you were focusing on the marketing and the communication, and that was it. It was visuals, it was graphics, it was good copy, it was driving the sales. But now you have to take many other aspects into consideration. You have to understand the technology behind IT solutions and so forth. You have to be able to discuss and understand data analysis. What is the customer doing? What are they not doing? What do you want them to do? You have to be much more analytical in your mindset. Also be curious about analytics and data and having discussions with data guys. And to add to that, of course, you have to have the good old marketing skills that is both explaining in an appealing way what you do and what you're selling, and actually sell it. So I think I don't know if you have to be more expert. You have different types of expert now, but that expert also have to have a wider view on and capacity than it used to be.
Right. Right, that's really interesting, and I think that leads me really nicely into the next question, which is, why did you choose to go into financial services as a marketing professional and not in any of the other industries like fast-moving consumer goods, as you mentioned earlier, or media, or any other type of industry?
I've always found it very interesting to work in this fairly traditional industry during a period that when it has changed tremendously. Yeah. It has been a super interesting journey to be part of, to see how a very traditional banking industry has changed in its essence, I would say. To be a part of a traditional industry that has been in such a great change over years now has been a constant source for both creativity, innovation, being part of something that is completely game-changing, forced you to think in new ways, both in communication but also in product development and the digital solution that is behind. That is one part of it, and another part of it is to I think that the financial services is much more easy to understand for the customers today due to the digital development that has been a transparency. It's easier to understand your personal finances with the help of apps and different digital tools that you can figure out and be much more involved in a transparent and democratic way than you could, I don't know, in the early 80s or something.
Right.
And that, I think, also is a very positive aspect of how this industry have evolved and developed, and I think that it will be way more of that, especially considering the added value from fintech companies. And I think that it's a great movement.
Yeah, and can you share with us, in your career, what's the achievement that you feel most proud of?
I think what I feel most proud of is how we as a team has developed and evolved at BNP Paribas Personal Finance. When we started out 8 years ago, we was a fairly traditional marketing team working with the traditional. Of course, we worked with digital channels and so forth, but it was the roles itself and how we work within the company was fairly traditional. Now we are a pan-Nordic team that is working with teams in both Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. We are way more focused on the full customer experience and have competences of that in all the countries, and is having that as a grand focus, whatever we're doing, if it's sales-related projects or if it's communication or digital development of the app and home banking, for example. It has created a spirit and an energy in the team to have that type of full view, more holistic view of the customer experience and journey during the lifetime of the customer, that I find very both stimulating and I'm proud of, to see how the team has taking on new roles and also a little bit internally breaking down the silos to other departments. We have a way more transparent and a great way of working with operations team, for example, to secure that we are creating an experience for the customer that is good from the beginning to the end, and that we're catching all the touch points and identifying pain points, and maybe there are also some passion points that we can build upon and learn from and be even better at. And that, to work like that, both in your team and together with other teams in the bank, is creating pride. And I think that is what I'm most proud of, is to have a team that I feel coming to work, working with their task, and have a great pride in what they're doing.
Right.
And that is also driving both energy and development in itself.
Of course. And well, as you were mentioning, we've seen an enormous transformation in the industry over the past 5-10 years, mostly due to technology. You mentioned also that technological change has forced people in your field to expand their set of skills and scope. But what are other ways in which technology has particularly impacted the role of marketing and communications in financial services?
It has of course helped us. I would say technology is the fundamentals of driving this very positive development from a customer perspective. It has helped the customer to better understand services in an industry that was a little bit maybe inaccessible before. Mm-hmm. But even if it's sometimes complex technologies behind, I am amazed how we as an industry have used them together with fintechs, but also sometimes on our own in the traditional banks, and to make the services more accessible and to help the customer understand personal finance, and as well as understanding the products and the services that they're using. That is one aspect, so that's the customer aspect of technology. Another aspect, I would say, it's even if we sometimes think, it's never fast enough. I think that technology in itself has made us way more fast, swift, and agile, both, of course, fintechs, but also traditional banks, to make changes and to adapt to a fast-changing reality, and has spurred the creativity in the industry as a whole.
So we often see that because of the intangible nature, and also, as you said earlier, sometimes banking products have been a bit of inaccessible to customers to understand. So how as a marketeer and a communications executive in a bank, how do you ensure that customers understand what's the value proposition of your products?
You have to have an ability to understand people's relationship with money. I think that's the fundamentals in this industry when you work with all aspects of it, actually. But to understand this very emotional, also very historical relationship with money, and to actually dwell upon and think about what it means for a customer. We can see, for example, when you co-listening with the guys in the operations team, that it's not always comfortable to talk about money. If you have money, that is emotionally one way. If you talk about savings, and you can be, and if you loan money, it's probably even more emotional. You're getting evaluated, and you're being judged.
Yeah.
It's getting very, very personal. Yeah. And the more I work with this, I understand that you have to pay attention to that. You have to understand the emotional relationship between money and humans in order to create the communication, as well as a customer journey and a customer experience that takes this into consideration. Even if we have all these regulatory demands and we have compliance and legal aspects of it, you have to figure out the way of not presenting yourself as more complex and inaccessible than you have to. And you also have to have picking up on the signals that you get from the customer, and to adopt your it could be communication, it could be the marketing aspect, it could be the way you present it in digital flows and journeys and tools. That would probably be my answer.
Right, no, that's really insightful. Yeah.
And I think that is sometimes a little bit overseen in the industry as a whole. that you never really think about that. We're here for the money, we sell money, or we earn money on money.
Yeah.
But I think it's even more important now with the technology at hand and the data we have, and both the transparency and seamlessness, and how we use data to both, to be honest, help our business as well as sometimes helping the customers. Still have a focus on what we're actually here for, and thinking about this relationship that people have with money. It's not always easy, and it's to some extent also filled with anxiety and high emotions, and could be high and low emotions, but everybody has a relationship with money.
Yeah.
And it's very personal. And I think you have to tap into that and understand that and respect that in order to find good, smart solutions for the customer as well as your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in terms of, we've seen over the past few years changes in customer behavior, customer expectations. Has the content that you produce, that you put out, changed as a result of those changes?
Yes, yes, I would say it has. I think that we previously focused maybe more on the top of the funnel and the end of the funnel to get the volumes, the awareness into the sales, and then convert it with a good call to action kind of. Now we can see that with more players in the market, there is more competitors, other types of competitors, also that to a larger extent people are having more than one bank. It's not super common, but you still use more financial services of different sort, and getting your own little mix of financial services to a larger extent than previously. And to keep the stickiness and to hold on to your customer, you have to be relevant. So what we're looking at is much more like mid-funnel marketing. For example, we have been looking into nurturing that initial relationship that we maybe created in the top of the funnel, and to make sure that we're still relevant, we're still interesting, we are presenting ourselves in an appealing way where we can working in a broader scope with, of course, good old product marketing, but also other aspects of the brand and what role we are playing in the customer's life. And just take an example for when we have from social media that you can talk about products, aspects of a product, such as insurance or whatever it is, but also like different types of personal or consumer finance topics, vacations, or how to save on energy, or even more personal day-to-day matters that we have great success with. And that is not, when you look at the KPIs for that, is that sales? No, it's not. It's time spent with brand, or having a better performance at retargeting, for example. You can see that more either existing or new customers returning to your site or to this segment of communication, so to say. And we can see that it's actually paying off, because it's always a struggle to kind of convince finance people about that this is a great idea. But giving the more complex structure of where we operate right now, it's apparently paying off, because when we can look at the brand awareness lately, where we have had some challenges with pandemic stuff and also regulatory stuff, we can see that with this focus on like creating stickiness and relevance and appealing in a little bit different way to the customers, you also can see a lift in the brand awareness. So, yeah.
Right, and my next question is sort of related to this, but it's about channels. We start to see some financial institutions using a wide variety of channels to communicate. Some are even popping up on TikTok these days. So how has your use of channels changed as technology has swept through the industry?
We have started more and more to use social media. which is, I think we're having a broader scope of how to work with marketing channels and what marketing channel is assisting each step in the sales funnel, so to say, and having more both data and understanding and preciseness in regards of what channel is doing what. I'm a big believer in search engine optimization. That is something we have been working on for 6-7 years, and that is to have this presence in the digital universe as a complete foundation of everything we do, and we can also use it more and more as different aspects of how we would like to be perceived and what we want to communicate, and picking up on both trends and topics that we would like to be connected to.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the traditional media, and it's getting more expensive. It's getting smaller. People are not using it that much. So we're using it, but I can see that it's playing a less and less important role, even if traditional media like TV and broad channels in itself is creating volumes that is necessary. So I think that we're finding new ways of creating that volume that is necessary for the business, but looking into alternative ways of creating it due to both behavior among the customers as well as the increase of price in some of the channels.
Right. And just to close, Jenny, one last question. If you were to advise a young marketeer that is looking forward to starting their career, what advice would you give them in relation to starting a career in financial services?
I think that financial services as an industry is offering a great platform of digging into many different aspects of both technology and communication. It's a super exciting environment to be in, especially considering that the industry itself is working with so many both new partners, like fintech partners, but also new ways of working with communication and product development. It's also a great way of making sure that you're in a constant change. You have a constant way of working with innovation as well as creativity. And I would say that if you're looking for being part of an industry that have all types of game-changing events all the time, this is the place to be.
Wonderful. Well, with that, Jenny, we thank you so much for spending time with us and for enlightening us about the role of marketing and communications in financial services. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And of course, we look forward to seeing you again in September at Nordic Fintech Week.
Yes, it will be great to be there.
We look forward to having you there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.